Minnie, welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for being here. We value your time and participation. Thank you so much for sharing, for coming and sharing your expertise with our attendees. So we would love to know more about your experience and personal and professional backgrounds.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a great opportunity. So thanks for having me again. So I have been in product management for about 8 to 10 years now, but I didn't start out as a PM or knowing what a PM does, let alone having a desire to be one. I'm an engineer by education. What attracted me to engineering is the fact that engineers help problem solve. And I knew that as a detail-oriented person, I would love, problem solving and being an engineer. So my career journey began with my first gig right after my undergrad program. I worked as a software engineer for a telecom company, a startup in India. And I worked with a technology consulting company following that. And at that early point, I realized that I wanted to pursue a graduate program in computer science. So I did that. I graduated from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. I got my master's degree. And for those of you who know that, Charlotte is a large banking town. So I got into fintech mainly because I was at the right place at the right time. And I was recruited into a leadership development program in the technology group of one of the nation's largest banks, now Wells Fargo. And I spent around 7 to 8 years of my careers in different parts of the bank. And one of the benefits of working for a large corporation is that you can change departments, you can experiment with different roles, you can learn about different functions while putting yourself through not so drastic changes. And through this journey of experimenting about different teams, functions, and roles, I realized that the more I liked working on defining what to build more than coding, which is how you build things. And this what to build is mostly what product management is about. So after getting experience in one of the largest banks, in both the commercial part of the bank, which is, if you could think of it, that's more a B2B business, and the consumer part of the organization, which was more of a B2C business, business to consumer business, I felt the need to learn beyond my current role. And at this point, I wanted to experiment and join a smaller, much nimbler organization where I could end up having a bigger impact and I could create products and experiences much faster than what I was able to do before. So that led to my current position at Braintree, where I am part of the card processing team. Braintree is a PayPal service, and we enable seamless payment experiences for merchants. You may not have heard of us, but I'm pretty sure you've used our payments rail. And if you were wondering how, so anytime you take an Uber or you book an Airbnb or you buy a ticket for a sporting or music event via Ticketmaster, you're going through the payment rails that my team at Braintree is responsible for building and supporting. And I would say that's pretty impactful. And that level of impact and responsibility is what keeps me going in product management.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Minnie, for the lovely introduction. So, Minnie, what is the role of a product manager?
That's a great question. In the simplest sense, a PM is accountable and responsible for everything related to their product. So you are the CEO of your product. And that's a very simplest sense. To kind of add more depth to that, a PM decides, as I said before, what features to be built, but there's beyond that. PM is also responsible to decide and to kind of come up with why should something be built. Not everything that comes as a feature should be built. It should be, ranked. It should even be scrapped and something that should not be considered. So the why of something is very important. And a PM is also responsible for when a feature or a product should be released in the market. And all of this facilitation, the facilitation of the what, the why, and the when throughout the organization to actually get a product to market, a product that brings value and provides delightful experience, is what a PM does. So some of the things that a PM does to kind of ensure all of that is to make sure that the PM should have a good understanding of the market. The PM should understand what your competitors are doing. As a PM, I want to understand the ins and outs of my customers. A PM should have a vision for your product and also evangelize that vision throughout the organization and translate that vision into a product roadmap. And a lot of that happens with not just saying, feature A needs to go, in Q1 or Q2, but also coming up with a go-to-market plan, and of course, delivering the actual product. In reality, the roles and responsibilities of a PM differs a lot from company to company, and it also depends on the product itself. So, I shared a little bit about my experience. I'll take an example from my past. So I was a PM responsible for creating a mobile wallet experience for customers of a financial institution. In that role, which was part of a large corporation at that time, I wasn't the one who came up with the vision, even though I was the PM driving the product or the feature. Or I wasn't the one who was asking why we need to build a mobile wallet. How would that drive key performance indicators for the organization? What I was responsible was to understand the competition. I had the responsibility to understand the customers, what personas we would target, and to maintain and develop a roadmap by defining what features would be part of an MVP release, what could come as round 2, what would come as round 3. So when I did that, I worked with UX designers. I sat down and did different customer studies on research. We would show them, a mock-up of what the front end would look like, and ask them about, do you like an experience which shows a carousel that you could swipe through, or would you prefer an experience that shows you a list of cards in your wallet? Like, what do you really prefer? So some of my roles and responsibilities in that organization and in that product were very different. I, as a PM, did not, I ended up providing a framework for the kind of user stories we need, but I had the support of a BA, a business analyst, who would actually write user stories. And I also had the support of project managers who drove delivery and came up with milestones and project plan. The same PM role in my current organization looks very different. So my current product does not have any front end or web experience. My customers today are merchants. They're not consumers, as I said, right now in a B2B space. And when I think about customer experience, I think about things like, so I'm building a feature. Will my merchants be able to process credit card transactions seamlessly? And what this really means is that as consumers, we all buy things online, or book a ride. And when we provide our card information into an app, into a website, an online service, we're providing a card information to a merchant. There's a complex set of interactions that are triggered to ensure the card payment is processed successfully. The payment goes from a merchant to a card processing service by Braintree. We take on the complexity of routing the payment to the right processors. It goes down to an entity like Visa or MasterCard, and then ends up into a bank which issued your credit card. And the bank essentially says, oh, Minnie is looking to do a $10 ride, all good, right? And I'm kind of simplifying this. There's a lot of complexity, a lot of edge cases, a lot of scenarios that could happen. So when I say I'm responsible for ensuring that we deliver a seamless experience, it means hiding all of these complex interactions for the merchants who use our processing services so that they can focus on running their business. And as a product manager, I'm responsible and I think about how do I enable experiences like that. So in contrast, the role of a PM in my current capacity has a higher degree of accountability, a higher degree of impact. I help define the vision of the product in my current role. And very specifically, I drive the why a lot. Anything that comes up has to be why should this be done? Why should we building a feature that's requested by this merchant and not a feature that's requested by another merchant, and why now? So I'm also very hands-on in my current role, and I wear the project manager hat here as well. I drive dates and deliverables with my engineering team directly. I work very closely with operations, accounts, sales team, and define the go-to-market. So there are certain similarities of what I did as a PM in a previous role to what I do as a PM right now. But again, there's, what a PM does varies a lot, organization to organization, and also different product roles within an organization could also be different.
Thank you, Winnie. Thank you so much for letting us know such a valuable information. So, Winnie, what is a typical day as product manager?
A typical day is never boring, very always interesting. My day typically starts with a stand up with my team. So we follow an agile process, and stand-ups start as part of an agile team. We share updates on what we did yesterday. So I get together with my engineers, my engineering manager, tech lead, me as a PM. We share updates on what we did yesterday. What are we going to do today? And are there any blockers? And as a PM, I also use stand-up as an opportunity to provide additional context that is relevant to my team, to my engineering team on the work that they're currently doing. This is slightly different from, a very traditional stand-up is literally like, everyone just says what's going on, blockers, and they disperse for the day. I feel providing context as a PM is very important, and stand-up becomes an opportunity to kind of quickly just say, if my one of my engineers is working on a card related to processing for a certain merchant, and I got on a call with the account manager or the merchant yesterday, it's important to bring that context back and have the entire team hear that. So I like to structure, add on a little twist to the stand-up to do that. Some of my other things is I have one-on-ones with various partners and stakeholders. A PM needs to have a very good working relationship with their engineering manager counterpart. So I'll make sure that my engineering manager and I actually sync very regularly, apart from sitting next to each other and exchanging different updates. We also make sure that we have a structured one-on-one two times a week. I also have one-on-ones with other product managers, so that if there is a feature that we're building and the feature impacts a team which does the funding for our transaction, we'll have conversations and we'll have regular syncs on not just tactical issues, but how can we work better? How can strategically we do things that makes the organization better as well? And these things become important opportunities to share knowledge, to influence others in the organizations, and also to build relationships, which specifically for a PM, being able to connect my product and my team to the rest of the organization is very important. So I talked about stand-ups, I talked about one-on-ones. I typically end up spending some time participating in iteration planning with my tech lead and engineering manager counterpart for the upcoming sprint, that is the next sprint that the team's working on, so that we all have a good understanding of what work is the team picking next week. Some of my interaction, depending on the day and what's going on, is also dealing with interruptions. And interruptions could be things like urgent merchant requests, customer requests that come in, or production issues. And when some of this happens, as a PM, I jump in on issues that require an assessment or requires prioritization, providing context, communication, and I help my team clear the path so that the engineers can solve the problem and I can take care of the other things around it. Prioritization is another part of it. As a lot of these requests come in, understanding what the real problem or ask is and stack ranking it against other requests is something important. I'll end up talking to other PMs in my organization and say, hey, we have had 3 requests come in. What does it impact? What, does it impact a certain customer vertical, or does it impact just one merchant? And how do we kind of end up prioritizing things that way. The other thing that I'm getting very conscious to do, as you've heard, a lot of these things that happen are very tactical in nature. So to kind of make sure that I'm thinking about, long-term problems, solving the important problems and not just dealing with the urgent, I've started to put strategic time blocks on my calendar, a couple of days a week, so that I can focus on working on things like vision, and not just be consumed with the day-to-day running of the product. And this is, what I like to think of as like brain time, of thinking about how do we solve a particular tricky issues. I spend some of this time writing papers. So what I mean by papers is context-setting documents for others to consume in the organization that give an overview about what is a problem we're solving, who are we solving for, those kind of things. And that's how I typically end up spending my day.
Thank you so much, Minnie. So apart from this, what is the most fun part of your job?
I thrive on learning new things and doing a variety of things. And the fun thing about being a PM is that I get to do exactly that. I get to work on multiple initiatives at a given time, and I get to solve problems of varying scale. So I just talked about how my typical day looks. I work on a wide range of tasks every day. And the fun part is it's not repetitive tasks. So for example, one of my key initiatives right now is in a testing phase. So I actually ended up, so last week I spent a lot of time defining test scenarios, detailed test cases, and then coordinate things with other partners and how we would test. And starting this week, I'm actually helping run those test cases themselves, helping record the results and communicate that. And as my initiative moves from the testing phase to a phase of like getting ready to launch in the market, I also then focus a lot of my time defining go-to-market strategy. I'm thinking about how do I create launch checklist for when we're done testing. And as part of like this entire journey, I'm able to visualize a product and actually see it come to life in front of my eyes and being live in the market, which is both exhausting, but it's also exhilarating at the same time. And the other fun part that I get to do this is I get to do all of this while I work with super smart but down to earth individuals. And I work hard while we trade bad jokes and silly emojis. So that the part about working on challenging problems with smart and interesting people is what's the most fun part about the job.
Thank you so much, Minnie. Thank you so much for the answer. So what are the prerequisites to target product manager role?
Prerequisites. I would say that there's a perception that an education or previous experience in technology is a must-have to be a product manager. I would say that's fake news. There are no hard rules to become a product manager. But I would also acknowledge that more often you see people like me who have been in technology, who have been an engineer, and have made the shift to being a PM. And I would say that that trend happens more because of the proximity of a PM role and an engineering role. Like when I made the shift, I saw, when I made the shift from engineering to PM, I actually didn't see people whose titles were product managers, but I did see people who are doing that kind of a role. So there's that, proximity that, you see something, you have exposure to it, and you think that, oh, that's interesting, let me go ahead and do it. And there's also a component for someone who makes that shift that, you understand technology. But again, to kind of, underline the fact, one doesn't have to be an engineer to understand technology. I mean, even as an engineer, I haven't coded for a while now. I would say there's some technology parts that, it's like, I get it. I get what web services are. I have a passion for databases. I still, poke my nose in SQL. I understand tables. I understand primary key. But that's not the only part. There's a lot of new technology, newer areas, which I don't understand or I don't know yet, but I do take an interest in learning about them conceptually. And I think that's the prerequisite to, if I want to call it a prerequisite of, thinking about a product manager role, I would say a desire to learn, a desire to, take on new things, new experiences, or learn new concepts is key, because that's the only thing that's constant. And I would say that's not just unique to a product manager role, that's unique to being in technology, that, you keep up, and for you to be someone to be successful, you just keep learning. The second thing I would say is being genuinely interested in technology. It's hard to, put yourself towards learning something if you're not interested in it. It becomes a chore instead of, something that's, oh, I really want to know this. And the third thing I would say is having empathy. As a product manager, we're not only thinking about, solutions, but we're also thinking about, is this solution the right solution for this problem and for our customers? And empathy kind of, makes you step into your customers' shoes and see things from their perspective. I might think that, oh, I've delivered this solution which provides, let's say, great user experience. The buttons are like noticeable. I can see the list of cards here very well. But if from a consumer perspective, just getting to that screen takes like 4 or 5 clicks, would I even get there? Or if I get there, it's so much harder for me to do that it's not solving the problem. So thinking about what the customer's problems really are and what are we solving for that, that's key. A lot of time people talk about empathy as empathy for customers. I feel empathy, apart from empathy for customers, having empathy for internal stakeholders is very important as well. And what I mean by internal stakeholders is people who support you to deliver the product. It could be your operations team. It could be your sales or accounts team who actually directly interacts with your customers. It could be other product teams who are supporting a feature that you're building. And I call out that empathy is important, because unless we understand what our internal stakeholders need of us, as product managers, we'd be missing a key piece of working collaboratively together. So kind of to summarize, I would say a desire to learn, being genuinely interested in technology, and empathy, both for customers and internal stakeholders, are pretty much your baseline for what you should want to have before you think about becoming a product manager.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mini. So, Mini, what is the career path of a product manager?
A career path of a product manager is not super defined. When I started in product management, I actually didn't know when I was an engineer that there was a career path called product management. I think the role is much more elevated now. It's much more visible to people. People talk about it a lot. And it's come with a lot of Silicon Valley companies have a PM role, and especially technology companies that a lot of people respect and look up to. It used to be that a product manager would be someone who's an engineer, similar to my trajectory, an engineer who's knows technology, made transitioning over to product manager. There's also another typical path that happens is someone who's a grad school from a management program, an MBA grad, and they're right out of their grad program, they're hired into associate product management programs. I know Google has a very famous associate product management program. Yahoo used to have one, and Facebook has one as well. And getting into a PM role, that's another path that happens. Management consultant, people who have consulted with big, the three big or other management consulting companies, also kind of take over as into the product role or path. The other thing that I've seen, and I hope people speak about a lot this as well, is a lot of people who have done other things, who have either had a background in arts, an education in arts, background in design, also make excellent product managers, and I've seen those as well. And and that's very interesting, because that whole empathy part that I just talked about, when you're designing, when you're a designer, you're a front-end designer, that ability to have empathy is specific, is especially high for someone who's a designer. I'm not saying that engineers or others don't have empathy, but to kind of generalize that, as a designer, when you're thinking day in and day out about, okay, this is my experience, how would merchants see it, that kind of a person puts, the empathy hat way more, or they get the chance to put the empathy hat way more. And I think that's another career path of, getting into product. So if you want to think about, there are different ways of getting into product. And a lot of times you get into product as when I started, I got in as a product analyst. I've had different roles, different type of roles or titles, to what I can now compare to what was an associate product management role, but it wasn't, or a junior product manager role, but that term did not exist. And it was more of a business analyst or a product analyst. And then I became a product manager for a product, along with other PMs for the same product, managing different area. And then now I'm a senior product manager. And then there's different ways from this part of the career to move forward. Some companies have a principal product manager path, and what that means is someone who's a high performing individual contributor. They're not managing people. They are an SME, and they really are an expert in product management, where they're helping other PMs, their peers or junior PMs in the organization, without them directly reporting to them, in solving problems that are large problems across product areas, and getting the organization's product management practice, elevating that. So there's a principal product manager path. And then there's also group product manager path, a group or a lead product manager path. And what that path means is that as a PM, you manage other PMs, and your product, instead of saying, card processing or a mobile wallet being your product actually becomes your team who are delivering product solutions. And as a group PM, you start thinking about, you're not delivering things, but how are you enabling other PMs deliver things? And both paths, either as an individual contributor or a PM leading other PMs, there is a lot of scope. The more you work on it, the more you refine your craft. There's scope of how much you can do, the complexity you take, keeps on increasing and keeps on increasing.
Thank you so much, Minnie, for the answer. So here comes my next question. So what is the, I would say, best job search strategy for product manager position?
Yeah. So searching for a job is, one of those experiences that I'm sure. Sorry, I'm hearing feedback. Are you? Okay, it's good now. So searching for a job is one of those experiences that I'm sure most of don't look forward to. It puts us in a very vulnerable position, especially when your current, job or experience, you're not happy where you are. So when I was looking to move out of my last role, it took me some time to find the right fit. So if there are folks who are looking for, a product manager role, it takes time. I know it's hard. My biggest learning from, my last job search, I had two big learnings. Number one, use your network. I think everyone says this. If you Google articles about how should, what are the best strategies, like that's number one. It's obvious. It's well, everyone says it, but I don't think everyone does it. And I, including me, I did not do it as well as I should have. So when I say use your network, it doesn't have to be people that you know directly. Look up LinkedIn. There are different tools. There's, you could go to LinkedIn Jobs, you could go to Indeed, Glassdoor. There's a lot of tools that you can do to search for a job, and they are effective. But nothing is effective as reaching out to someone and asking for a referral for a position in their company. And a lot of times people hesitate. I haven't talked to this person in 5 years, or oh, I worked with them in a in a project and maybe met with them once. Can I ask them? But I would say the worst thing that could happen when you reach out to someone is they could say no. And believe me, most of people don't say no. So I would say, find out, look at LinkedIn, find out people go back into your history, or people that they know or working in companies that you're interested in. And the second thing I would say is clearly lay down and understand what you want. And looking for a PM position, I would say, put a twist to it. Apply PM principles to doing your job search as well. So think about what kind of companies you like to work for. Clearly define what you want. So think about things like, do you want exposure to a certain industry? I might be a designer in a retail industry. I could decide if I want to do something similar. To start my PM career, I could be a PM in a retail technology company, or I could decide if I want to be a PM in, let's say, an e-commerce technology company, slightly related, not much, but still. So think about what kind of industry do you want to target. Think about what is the right size of a company. Do you excel in working in smaller companies versus bigger companies? Another thing that I like to think is, are there products or experiences that you admire? If you watch Netflix and their recommendation engine is something that you're like, wow, how you're thinking, how did they know? How did they build that? If you have certain kind of products that you look up to, those would be the kind of companies that you should be thinking about. And as you start asking yourself those questions, make a list of company that you would like to target. I started by making a list of 50 companies, way too much. And then I boiled down to my top 10 companies based on the criteria that I wanted. I wanted to work, and my last job before this was in a bank, a financial institution. I wanted to work in fintech, but I didn't want to work for a bank again. And so I narrowed down my space into fintech companies or e-commerce companies, which is, still in the payments space. And then I started thinking about, okay, I work for a big company. Now what do I want to do? Do I work for a very small, do I want to work for a startup that's just starting? Or do I want to work for, a company which has, it's smaller, but still is not a 5% startup? And take into consideration your personal situation as well. When I was job hunting the last time, I had two very young kids. One was still an infant. And I knew that, I'm a workaholic. I know the kind of work I do. I know the kind of hours I put in. But at the same time, I knew that I would not be at that point in my career. It would not be a good fit for me if I targeted for like a 5% startup. And I ended up deciding a company which was still smaller in size, where I would still have an impact, and I would still put in all I have, but how would I balance that with my life? So think about the things that are going, your desire, your goals. What are you good at? Where do you want to go? And translate this into a list of companies that you would like to target. Start from there. Again, as I said, use your network to find people there. Go to events that these companies host, events where people from these companies are going and speaking, presenting. They're attending events. Go meet them, talk to them. So for example, I was at an event in Yelp last month. I was moderating a panel of, rockstar PMs. And when we wrapped up this panel, and there's, a networking session happening, I had a lot of people that, most of them, I think all of them, I hadn't met before, but they wanted to know about what I was doing, what Braintree was doing, what I do for them. And a few also asked, hey, are you looking for PMs? I'm looking for something else. Can you please, let us know how this goes? And 3 people ended up forwarding their resume. I was happy to, forward it to the recruiting team. And I'm pretty sure that kind of a referral that comes in certainly always gets more attention when recruiters are, looking at 1,000 resumes. And I won't say that I am an exception. I'm more the standard. People don't just typically say no when someone asks and puts themselves out there. Sometimes people forget if they're too busy, but again, asking is a good thing. And when you do it in a targeted way, you are focusing your energy on things that matter. So I would say those are 2 big job search strategies that I would recommend. A couple other things I would say, start, if you are not in a PM position, if you are, in another role and you're looking to move into being a PM, start PMing where you are at. There's nothing stopping you from being a PM, from doing that exact job that you're doing. It doesn't have to be a title change. If you aren't in a engineering position, for example, you can still think about things from a customer experience. How would a feature that I'm coding now impact the customers? You could still have conversations with different stakeholders. And even though you may, you're not, assigned a title, you're still doing things. You're still giving yourself the opportunity to practice some of your, your new PM skills that you want to get better at, that you want to actually apply on job. You're doing that. And it's also becomes a way of, when you go for an interview, to talk to your potential employer and say that, hey, I'm not a PM now, but this is how I think about, or this is how I have taken initiatives to think about applying product management skills in my current role. And believe me, like when you're interviewing, that sets you apart from a lot of other people who are also interviewing for that. And as a plug-in for High Counselor, I would say events like these, understand where the market is, understand what other PMs are doing, learn from others. So events like this are also helpful and is a tool for your job search strategy.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mini. So, Mini, what do you think are the 3 tips to make your resume stand out for the product manager position?
I would say one of the things that I see a lot in resumes is people, state their roles, state their responsibilities, or even start with a summary, right? Everyone's, highly motivated, delivering results, a lot of other things. Summary is great, but think about a summary that's unique to you. Thinking about roles and responsibilities, don't just merely state your roles and responsibilities in a resume. What interests me when I'm looking at resume, when I'm interviewing people, is to understand what was your impact in that role. If I'm looking at 1,000 resumes and there are a few resumes where they call out the impact, the actual impact is not what's important there. What's important is the fact that this person, what I would think is that this person understood what they were doing, how it impacts the business and the bottom line of the organization. Because if you think about it, no matter what role you are in, and I would say this applies not to just being a PM, and this applies to like any role, understanding how your role, your position impacts the bottom line, provide hard metrics is very important. And for a PM to actually do that, it shows the level of attention to detail, but also a level of being aware of what things are going around you and not someone who's focused on the day-to-day. A second thing I would say is customize your resume. And what I mean by customize your resume is that if, as a PM, as an individual, you're applying to, let's say, a role in Facebook, a social networking platform, and a role for Google for a role which is completely, let's say Android product development, which is hardware product development versus like software social networking. So when you're applying to a role like that, don't take a standard resume and send both of those, the resume to both of those roles. I'm not asking, and I'm not suggesting, I would say, don't never write false things in your resume. I'm not saying write make up things for these different roles. What I'm saying is that think about what the job requirement for each is. Look at your background and highlight things that apply to, let's say, an Android hardware kind of a role. You might have worked in a hardware platform before, might not have been Android itself, but if you have some experience there, highlight that more. If you had worked in some software, let's say, marketing tool, an ad tool platform, highlight that for the Facebook role. When I was doing this the last time, I had previously worked for, one of my roles was working on a credit card platform, which was not doing processing, but which was doing, enabling sales of credit cards from a banking perspective. And I kind of made sure that I highlighted that experience, not because it was similar to what I was, targeting for, but if I think about it, recruiters do use keyword searches. So making sure that the job that they're looking for and your resume has, similar keywords is kind of that, you are making yourself easily findable. You're highlighting yourself over while making sure that it stays true to what you've done. So I would say customize your resume for, read role, job recs carefully, and then customize your resume. So that's tip number 2. I think we're at number 2. The third thing I would say is be succinct. And what I mean by that is if you are, someone with 2 years, 5 years of experience or so, keep your resume to 2 pages. It's extremely hard. It's extremely hard to trim, all of your accomplishments. Your resume is, where you show your accomplishments, you talk about it. But gain that fact, revise your resume multiple times, have different people look at it, but keep it, trimmed, cut out the fat, not the fact, fat, and make sure that your resume is talking about crisply, highlighting your last 2 to 3 experiences more. And the further, you're in your career, you don't need your GPA. You don't need to tell, all the details about your first job, or even, your first job could be like a single line, I worked here. Further you move ahead in your career, you don't even have to say, where you worked for the first couple of jobs, if that you only were there for a few months. So there are different ways of being succinct in a resume. And that's critical because no one wants to read a 4-page resume. And especially if you're starting out, you're new to the just starting your career, keep your resume to 1 page. It can be easily done. There's no point in saying all of the courses that you took. Think about someone who's reading this and what they want to take away from it. To be succinct. So summarizing my 3 tips are, don't just merely state your roles and responsibility. Think about highlight your impact. Customize your resume, number 2. And number 3, be succinct.
Thank you so much, Minnie, for the lovely answer. So, Minnie, here comes my last question. What 3 advice you have for aspiring candidates to be successful in product manager role?
I think I would say some of this is similar to what I said about the career search tools. Really know what your core values are. And what I mean by that is, what your core values and your strengths are. Like it's, know thyself. And think about, what do I like? I enjoy being in fintech. There are times when I've thought about, should I really be in fintech? Should I start thinking about other industries? But I know that I really like working in payments. I like thinking about, when I go swipe my card, when I buy something online, how do things really work? So think about things that you enjoy, and that itself takes time. The more time you spend thinking about observing yourself in certain situations, do you like, being a PM for technical product? There are roles that are called technical product manager roles. So if I was someone who really enjoyed being in technology, who really, not the coding part, but who really enjoyed designing APIs, things like that, that's important to understand. And a lot of times that because you start doing those things and you enjoy it, or you don't enjoy it. So, observe yourself, know yourself, go and have those conversations with yourself, and, keep reflecting as, what do you like? What do you want to be? And that's key because everyone has unique strengths, and finding that area in which you can excel is important. Something that I feel is important in product manager role is being comfortable with details. And, PMs could drive things at different levels, right? A PM could just think about strategy and high level vision. But to me, success really comes from knowing things inside out. Being detailed doesn't mean that you need to communicate all that details, but getting comfortable with details, getting comfortable with really finding how something works, understanding that, make sure that the solution you end up designing, you end up putting out there, are actual solutions that work, that are excellent, and that bring delight to your customers. The third thing that I would say is know your customers really well. There's different ways to do that. There's market research that's available. Actually talking to customers. If your customers are businesses, people want to be heard. Ask them what they're looking for. If your customers are actually consumers, there's markets, customer studies that are done. There are, apart from qualitative ways, there are quantitative ways to know your customers as well. Look at your data. If they're interacting with your app, um, and go look at what was being clicked on, how much time are your consumers spending on a specific page. There's a lot of data that's generated. Go look at the data to understand what your customers are doing. If you're and you know there's if you're tracking metrics like how much a customer is spending on a certain product, there's also data to know that. So qualitatively, quantitatively, market research, talking to other colleagues in the industry, out of the industry, really get to know your customers well. So I would say, three advice: know yourself, know where you want to be, get comfortable with details, and get to know your customers really well.
Thank you so much, Minnie, for the lovely answer, and thank you so much for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. So now I would quickly like to, take everyone through a brief story of High Counselor Inception. We are there that three major reasons due to which most of the people find difficulty in getting jobs. So what are those three reasons? Number one, lack of connection with company insiders, lack of information about company and job position, and candidates are not well prepared for the interview. So, High Counselor solve this problem. How do we do exactly? Suppose I want to get a job at Facebook. I could log into High Counselor website or mobile app, search for a current employee working at Facebook, and immediately book a phone or an email appointment for tips and career advice. Yes, you're right. You can take one-to-one coaching from someone working in your dream company. Our counselors work in all domains, like product, technology, and consulting domains. So if that is your target industry, do check out highcounselor.com. Just like this webinar, we conduct webinar every week. Don't forget to sign up on High Counselor platform. It will help us keep you posted about the upcoming awesome webinars. So all our video recordings are available on the YouTube. Moreover, we were live also on the YouTube. So do not forget to hit the bell icon here. Do not forget to hit the bell icon here so that you are always subscribed to our channel and get the update about the webinars. And if you enjoyed this webinar, I would request you all to share a word of mouth on your social media.